What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for XYO, making some further additions to what I've said about it recently, which I will go back over briefly as to convey the entire point of this video. But nonetheless, to go ahead and get it started here, the first thing I want to point out is, before I get really to the main topic, these trend lines here. So we see the resistance here for XYO going from the wick high locally around 4.5 cents all the way down to this wick high here at around roughly just a bit below 2.5 cents, with XYO recently getting it back above it, as you can see right here, coming back down and right now retesting it. Also, we can see that there is this ascending trend line here, support, which is drawn with respect to the wick lows beginning at this consolidation that XYO saw before it led into the move from around just a little bit under a penny to the local high of 4.5 cents. So potentially this could be the support line that causes XYO to bounce, in the sense that XYO has already met its local low and it's not going to continue to go lower. Also, again, furthering that could be the fact that we've seen XYO break above here and coming down is retesting this resistance again along with the support, and will continue to go up here on forward. XYO at this point is down around approximately 67% at this point. That's quite typical of altcoins during bull markets, sometimes even 80 up to 90% could be a pullback even during bull markets. So again, there's always more room for XYO to come down. If it were to go to 80%, that would be at around 0.008. That would be below a penny. I personally, as I've said many times, do not want to see that happen. I mean, I don't think that if we do see XYO do something along these lines and it continues just to stagger down here, and let's say it finds main support right here at along a penny, but then we see some quick wicks below it. I think that, I mean, that's definitely probable. That would also line up with XYO coming down here and really kind of just bobbing and weaving right here along where we can see the 200 EMA here and the 800 EMA here. So that, again, is also a reasonable and probable outcome as well. But I really just don't, again, just to emphasize this, do not want to see, personally speaking at least, on the daily or higher, see XYO start to significantly close and open below a penny. I just don't think that's going to be very good. I don't think that's really all too likely, but it's definitely a possibility nonetheless. So on the 6 hour here, I want to point out, again, going to this consolidation that XYO saw right before the pump up towards around 4.5 pennies. As I mentioned last time around, there's this nice symmetrical triangle. I saw this somewhere right here within this range. Was honestly trying to wait to see if it would go down any lower to buy in, but as soon as I saw this symmetrical formation here, I just couldn't, try to wait to see if it was going to go lower. It just looked too good and too symmetrical, all things considered, with where Bitcoin's at and a lot of other technical data that I was seeing in the charts. So obviously that ended up playing out very well. So we saw this again. So this symmetrical triangle here, it culminated in the end of November, beginning of 2024, or well, the end of November, beginning of December in 2024. Whereas if we go back to the first move in XYO's bull market so far, we can see that, zooming in closely here, we can see something that I think is quite comparable and quite similar. This one's not as symmetrical, but you can still see, I believe, a nice little triangular-esque formation here. Yeah, I guess it's roughly similar. It's kind of tilted towards the downside, but we see this. What's very interesting is this culminated also at the end of November, leading into the beginning of December, but in 2023. We can see that this move overall began basically somewhere right here in October 2023, really September leading in October 2023. And if we go to the most recent move here as well, we can also see that 2024, we see September here leading into now October here, then leading into November. Very, very, very similar time frames just a year later, which I find very, very interesting. As I pointed out on the 4-day, I think it was the 4-day, I don't quite remember, but here I'm using the 2-day to demonstrate this. where going back again, so this is really the first move in XY's bull market. Now I believe we're seeing a second move here. We're going to see a retracement. We're going to continue to go higher at some point, which could be, basically now over the next few weeks, according to the temporal trends that I'm pointing out currently. But essentially what we saw here is we see this kind of bump up here for XYO. We see a build-up period, then we see a borderline vertical impulse correction. Second part of that impulse really characterizing it as an ABC or ABCD pattern. Fast forwarding to, again, just the same time a year, just a year later in 2024, we kind of see this bump in the road here. We see XYO build up. Right here is where that symmetrical triangle would have been, just as right here is where the symmetrical triangle was in November 2023. Again, a year later here, we're seeing November 2024, symmetrical triangle. Then we see a volatile, borderline vertical impulse towards the upside. Now we're seeing, again, as you can tell, we're seeing this correction here for XYO, which is rather similar to the one here, basically. And I'm just looking at it's like a falling wedge type pattern, just kind of a downward slanted correction. This one's obviously steeper here, but this could end up potentially being, roughly characterized as a falling wedge like pattern. This time around, from in 2023, this move was at most 47%. Obviously, we're about 20% more than that this time around with the current impulse pullback here for XYO. And assuming, I mean, obviously, it clearly, as I've demonstrated, the temporal confluences are clearly there in the beginning. So, again, looking back here in 2024, we see that this correction here for XYO ended in late January. Specifically, it bottomed out January, the 2-day period of January 25th, so around the 22nd to, around the 23rd to the 25th, which is, funnily enough, today being January, well, by the time this video is out, I'm recording this right at the end of the day, at the 22nd, but when this video is going to be up to the 23rd, that's exactly when we saw XYO bottoming out here back in 2024. It went sideways for a number of days, around a week to 2 weeks or so. Then within the first week of February 2024, this is when this impulse here began. So again, factoring in these clear temporal trends, we could very well see XYO is essentially already bottomed out. Might go a little bit lower. It's definitely possible, but essentially roughly this area right here is where XYO is going to be bottoming out. And then sometime like early February, we'll start to see it pick back up and head anywhere up to, as I pointed out, somewhere around approximately 12 to 17 cents, maybe even seeing some wicks up to around 18, 19, 20 cents. What's also very interesting is when you take the Fibonacci retracements of this first impulse to its low, we can see that the second impulse here topped out with respect to the 1.457 right here, the yellow line. We do the same thing, but for this time around, we can see that this 1457 goes all the way up to approximately 14 cents, essentially right at the middle of that approximately 12 to 17 cent range that I just mentioned, which I find very interesting. What's also interesting to note, which I went over this in the last video, but this move here was 243%. This move here was 223%. So we're just going to do some rounding here. We're just going to give it an even approximate 250% to make the math a little bit more fluid. But what's interesting is if you take the impulse here of this move, it was 1,000%. So we're seeing a 4x increase. So both of these moves back here, again, as I pointed out, were like I said, approximately 250%, 223 to 243%. And then we see this leg this time around here for XYO was 4 times that. If we, assuming XYO is bottomed out, or if it just goes a tad bit lower, from our current local low up 1,000%, would be putting it at 17 cents. So again, validating that range that I was mentioning. That range is also derived from this chart here. Now, as I've pointed out many times already so far, XYO is characterized so far by a massive macro W during this bull run here, the prior bull run, and then even leading into the current bull run, we see this massive W here, which I believe will then take XYO up anywhere from around 50 cents to $2.30 at highest. And, it could definitely go higher as well. As I've mentioned, this coin does not have an absurdly large circulating supply. It's approximately 13, 14 billion. It can, market capitalization wise, very feasibly go quite higher than $2.30. I think well, actually not I think, but I know I capped it at around $36 in one of the, I think it was actually the last video that I talked about this, or at least one of the ones I talked about it. Um, with more so somewhere around like $7 to $14 being more reasonable if it's going to vastly go higher than the $2.30 that I have pointed out up here with this box. So again, so we have that macro W that I pointed out. We see back in the prior bull market for XYO, it shot up one straight shoot all the way up to right here, which is the 382 of this channel here, which is an inside pitchfork drawn from the candle close low back here in January 2021 to the candle close high in November of 2021, drawn to the low, candle close low in September of 2024. Again, that is a structurally sound drawing for the channel because, as I pointed out, this is the W here. So we began at the second bottom of this W up to the all-time high, and then I ended the pitchfork at, again, the second bottom of this current W for the bear to bull market transition. Also, we see the XY coming down to the 618 of the channel down here on the lower bound half. So this is also, again, a good reason to find support. As I pointed out in the next post, if we look here at the Fibonacci retracement from the most recent local high down to the bottom of the current, or the prior bear market, you can see that it's also coming in meeting the 618. And if we do the same thing, but for the move from here all the way up to the most recent local high, it's also essentially right at the the 618. So we're seeing three different 618s for three different tools here, all finding confluence each other with everything else already mentioned with the temporal trends on one of the prior charts. So really the main point I brought this up was just to point out how, as I was showing here, XYL moved really, you could characterize the prior bull market as this type of ABC lightning bolt like pattern, where we saw again this first move all the way up to the range of the I think that's the, actually can't even remember exactly, I don't think that's the 0.5. So yeah, the 0.25 to the 0.382 right here is the range. So if we see XYL do that again, which will, according to the temporal trend, we saw this first move here during the XYL bull market currently. The second leg here ended in mid to late March. So if we see it continue to follow through, let's say, maybe it pushes a little bit into April. So let's just say mid to late March, early April. If XY moves up to that same range that it did last time around back here, so the 0.25 to 382, it would be anywhere from around approximately 13 cents to around 21 cents. So again, further essentially validating that range, to broaden it at its most, approximately 12 to around 21 cents. But all, again, kind of generally pointing to the ranges that I've been mentioning, assuming all this ends up playing out as time goes on. But if we go back to the, let's see, maybe, I think it was, actually it was this chart. So this chart, if we look here at the RSI, again, this is the weekly. I went over a few of these things in an X post recently. I linked the X post I made for XYO, but we see this, I went over this on the 4-day. But here we can see even on the weekly, we're seeing an uptrend on the RSI, that we're seeing the RSI come close to it. So if indeed we, factoring in again these temporal trends, those three different 618s that I pointed out, the potential move upwards towards approximately 12 to 21 cents by mid to late March, early April of this year, assuming all that is going to end up coming to fruition as a accurate projection into the future, then I would have to assume that this RSI will probably end up being tested or just being held in general. We won't see the RSI go too far below it. It might go a bit below it, but not too far. Because, I mean, like I said, we could see XYO go a tad bit lower over the next week or so, so the RSI might come down a little bit lower. But I find all that to be very interesting, not only what you see in the price chart itself, but seeing this on the RSI. If we look here at the RVI, we can also see that there is a support as well going all the way back to May of 2024. We see this ascending support, and the RVI is getting very close to it as well. We're seeing that the RVI is essentially as oversold as it was back in late October of 2024. So if we compare that, we see that right now the price of XYO is essentially, according to the RVI, is as oversold now at approximately 2 cents as it was back when it was worth approximately half a penny. So it's quite reset, but yet the price is still high. Again, it's meeting very important criteria. Like I said, those 3618s, then the temporal trends that I'm pointing out, the continued move upwards here towards the 2.5 to the 382, around 12 to 21 cents, according to the channel. That also can be further validated with the fact that, again, if we take the Fibonacci retracement here of the first impulse of the prior, this move back here, beginning the bull market of XY, you can see that this second leg went up to the 1.457. Again, like I mentioned, that also validates the 2.5 to the 382 here. What's also interesting is if you take the Fibonacci retracement of the most recent impulse, the 1.457 also sits at approximately 14 cents. Which again is, there's so many things pointing to, 13 cents, 14 cents, 16, 17, even up maybe to 21 cents, along with these temporal trends that I pointed out, which I don't really necessarily think should be overlooked. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, this is really just technical speculation through the analyses of the charts, and it's not guaranteed by any means to happen, but it is very interesting. Also, I just want to point out the boxes here, the yellow here and the purple that I've been pointing out for a number of weeks, where we're seeing XY come down and testing this very important yellow zone, which was, we saw resistance here, 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 here. Finally, XY, as you can see, broke above, is coming down and retesting it. Like I said, it could come down a little bit lower. So ultimately, what we could see XYL do here is, again, this is the first move of the bull market, tracement. This is going to be the second market here, or second move of the bull market. It's coming down, it's retracing and retesting a prior, what was support, flipping it into, or my bad, retesting a prior what was resistant, flipping it into support, and we could then see another takeoff up to somewhere within this green range that I have denoted there. Now, one last thing that I want to point out is if we take a look at Bitcoin on the, let's just go to the weekly. We take a look here on the weekly for Bitcoin. Really, this is all just pointing back to the temporal trends. Even Bitcoin, we see here, really beginning with this first, we see this first move here for Bitcoin, see the second move here for Bitcoin, and then currently what Bitcoin is on is the third and final move of the bull market. But we see Bitcoin topped out here in 2023 at around 30,000 in April, March, April, and then fast forward a year later, Bitcoin topped out at 75K in March, April. So will we see Bitcoin top out this year at the end of the bull market around March, April, May, June, as I've been pointing out? I think at this point it's likely to extend a little bit farther, but who knows? It could still top out in March, April. Also interesting is that when Bitcoin bottomed out here in September 2023, fast forward to September 2024, right here was when Bitcoin bottomed out. So from 25,000 here to approximately 50,000, both happening in September from 2023 to 2024. We're also seeing, again, we're seeing these kind of A, B, C, D moves here to structure each of these impulses for Bitcoin. Rather minor thing that I forgot to point out when I was going over Bitcoin here and going over the temporal trend and really using this as a comparison to emphasize the temporal nature of not only Bitcoin's bull market, but for XYO, and even, you could go look at Ethereum, you could go look at Cardano, and they're all basically like from 2023 to 2024, and what's looking to be shaping up is in 2025, bottoming out locally and topping out at the same times of the year during the current bull market. But I forgot to mention so if we go back to 2023, during the intermediate period, the halfway point of this first impulse here, or the first leg of the bull market for Bitcoin, it also was leading into February. It was January, February, and then the second leg began Go to 2024, we also see the same thing, January, February, and then it shot up to 75K. And then just a year later, now 2025, we're also January, February, and Bitcoin looks as if it is wanting to start its second leg, which of this third and final impulse of the bull market here for Bitcoin. And then also, because it's just now coming to my mind, but we're also seeing, which I pointed out in prior videos, a 5-stage bull market for Bitcoin as well, leading up to somewhere around 200 to 300,000, where we see 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 up here, where the all-time high would be, wherever it ends up culminating. So again, that is very important because, again, I pointed out the 5-stage impulse here for potentially for XYO. XYO is also, like I said, for this move here, bottoming out here in January, leading to February 2024, then had this leg here towards just a little bit under, well, yeah, just a little bit under 2 cents. And then again, like I said, we're also seeing 2025, January, February. This looks very much so like the prior move. Again, I mean, I've really kind of keep beating a dead horse with this, but I feel like it's necessary to emphasize just how striking all of these, you know, uncanny in a good way, all these confluences and similarities are. Such as we are also seeing here for XYO, as I pointed out. You know, obviously we see this one here, and we got a pullback. We might see the second one here. And I also pointed out in the last time I went over XYOs that we might see something where we'll see some choppiness here, and then we'll see a final move upwards, which ultimately, starting from here, this would be like an Elliott 5-stage impulse wave, where we see where this would be the 1, then we see the 2, then we see 3, 4, and then up here would be 5, where ultimately, again, this right here, this move being very crucial, because this right here essentially solidified the beginning of the bull market, because we saw, looking at the prior price history, this horizontal level right here was very, very important. It was resistance back here during the intermediate period of the prior bull market for XY. You can see it was brief support right here, which eventually got broke. You see here resistance, resistance. XY broke back above it, went back below it here for a bit, but it now has broke back above it, and has broke the purple resistance here, denoted by the box as well. So we're seeing so many things that are just characteristic of a transition from a bear market into an accumulation period and then into a bull market. I mean, again, not to mention, because I feel like this can't be stressed enough, this macro W pattern that XYO is setting now, just as it is set during the last bull market. But really, to finish that point I was making, is this move right here set the precedent for the XYO bull market, had this correction, which culminated with here, the second bottom of the macro W of the current bull market. And then here we are seeing potentially, like I said, an Elliott 5-stage impulse wave, which a lot of the times is how bull markets will behave. It can be used to characterize the bull market for Bitcoin from 2020 to 2021 when it hit 64,000. It can be used to characterize plenty of other assets, whether crypto or fiat, across the board. But really, the hard part of that is actually, you know, being right about it. Because I mean, you can see things that look like it's shaping up to be an Elliott, you know, wave in the many that there are, or specifically as I'm talking about the 5-stage impulse wave, but then it ends up not happening. But I think there's a pretty good case here to see XYL do something like that, nonetheless. But I believe that that was all that I wanted to go over in this video. So as always, again, none of this is meant to be financial advice. But all that being said and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Ooh, I'm regretting now.